Welcome to the 0400 Podcast, the podcast for dreamers. It is January 14th, 2022, 4 in the morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. It's good to see you guys. Happy New Year. And
Happy
Merry
New
Christmas.
Year. Yeah, actually, this is the first podcast of the new year, so
Yeah.
it's been a few weeks, and everybody's been, we've kind of regrouped to family and spending some quality time there, and also experiencing some pretty significant and important life changes and all that. So,
yeah,
I'm excited to be here with y'all, and I'm excited to see what comes out today. What kind of juice comes out of the squeeze today?
Oh, yeah. I'm excited. It's always good every time we get together.
Spence, I believe you have our 5-minute share, right?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what we drank this morning, bro? Because this is really good.
Yeah. I can grab the bag real quick. I totally blanked on it.
Sorry.
No, you put me on the spot. I like it.
It is good coffee.
It is.
So, Jake. Oh, sorry.
Mexican.
You're talking to the mic.
It is methodical. Methodical Mexican. Tastes like milk chocolate, peach, and caramel. It's a washed.
Weirdly enough,
origin.
I get the peach.
Yeah?
I was like, this is fruity, but I couldn't exactly tell you which fruit it was, but that makes sense.
So that's made in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know they made coffee there.
Yeah, they have great coffee.
I've sampled their tequila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On occasion.
Uh-huh. That's not really a morning drink, though.
It could be.
Excuse me, guys. So, yeah, I've got something pulled up today. So I know that we have some listeners from across the pond as well, as we've been seeing. And so today I want to talk about something in my 5-minute share, interestingly enough, that is from one of our presidents here in the United States, who I think was the coolest president, founded the National Park Service, was just a really cool guy, Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt was the president in the early 20th century and was just such a cool guy. Literally, this is one of the things I love about him. He died in, I think, 1919, and the telegram sent by his son Archibald to the rest of the kids was, "The old lion is dead." And that's all he sent. And so, but I think that really speaks to the heart of Teddy Roosevelt. He was a valorous, courageous guy, and he just loved adventure. And I think honestly, he was in touch with the dreamer and the childlikeness that we love to talk about here on the 0400 podcast. Mm-hmm. And he gave this really cool speech in 1910, I believe, called Citizen in a Republic. And he gave the speech over in France, actually. There was a lot of changes going on in France at the time, declining birth rates, like this weird kind of bourgeoisie, like the really fancy elites were becoming cynical about the working man and all these sorts of things. And he went over there. He had spent like a year hunting in Africa and going to the Congo in northern Africa, and then ended up in Europe. And he gave this speech, I think it was at a university. And there's this really, really famous passage from this that I have on my wall at my house. We have it on the wall at the jiu-jitsu gym. And like there are people, like if y'all know who Brene Brown is, she says there was a pre-Man in the Arena speech and a post-Man in the Arena speech, where her life was radically changed by this essentially one paragraph. And I kind of have the same sort of reaction to this speech. It's such a powerful thing. I want to actually, before I get to the Man in the Arena part, I want to actually read the paragraph above it too from the speech, because it was fantastic. And I think what it does is it's pushing back on the cynicism that comes with becoming like a bitter adult, right? When people get out of touch with the sense of wonder and their joy and their imagination, I think people become cynical, right? They become bitter, they become resentful, and it's really easy to happen. Like I've seen it happen to myself about things as well. And so this whole speech was a pushback against that mentality. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to read two paragraphs. The first paragraph is not as famous, but it was from the same speech. And the second paragraph is the famous section that I have on my wall. And I'll kind of give a thumbs up when that part starts, okay? So I'm just going to read this out. Let the man of learning, the man of lettered leisure, beware of that queer and cheap temptation to pose to himself and to others as the cynic, as the man who has outgrown emotions and beliefs, the man to whom good and evil are as one. The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride in cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes second to achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks not, as the possessor would fain think, of superiority, but of weakness. They mark the men unfit to bear their part manfully in the stern strife of living, who seek in the affectation of contempt for their achievements of others, to hide from others and from themselves their own weakness. The role is easy. There is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. And this is this passage. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.
Ugh.
Come on, dude.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Awesome.
what year was that?
1910.
1910.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it's 1910. And I think that speaks directly to the heart of what we're doing here. As far as the effort we're taking to become the valorous, courageous men that do what it takes, right? That dares greatly to dream and to reach for goals that are that transcend ourselves, that's doing something for the world and for the people we love. And it's so easy to look back, and I think we live in this culture where it's like the first instinct is critique. The first instinct is cynicism. And it's so easy. We've been advertised to our whole life. We see like hundreds of advertisements a day. We don't trust people. We don't trust anything. And you have this like bitterness that kind of can well up inside of you. And a lot of times it creates an inaction, but people kind of cling to that. It's almost like a badge of honor. Like there's no use. Like this world is so twisted, there's no use in me even trying to dream, no use in me even trying to achieve or to reach for something bigger than myself. And I think that speaks like truth to that lie, right? That things are hopeless. Like I don't believe that things are hopeless, you know? And we can't believe that things are hopeless, or our life begins to mimic that, and then it will be hopeless. It'll feel hopeless. And so this goes directly also for me into that. It dives into that hero's journey aspect. Like a good hero isn't a hero that has everything together. Like you watch a movie, and the hero has to strive and fail and fail
And react.
and fail and react. Yeah. It's like things are happening to them, right, over and over. And it's really like there a lot of times I think of Frodo in Lord of the Rings, right? Or Rand al'Thor in Wheel of Time, or Luke Skywalker. Things are happening to them over and over, and they have little to no control over it, and little to no, like it feels like a lot of times things are outside of their agency, but they still keep moving forward, right? And they still embrace responsibility, embrace the need to do something great, because they recognize there's something bigger than themselves. And in that they overcome, right? And you have some stories where they strive and they fail and it ends poorly, but at least they strived, right? Like Maximus Aurelius, you love Gladiator, right? It talks about the man in the arena. Maximus, right? That was his name. Right?
Maximus Decimus.
Decimus Aurelius. Sorry. Yeah. I knew there was
commander of the armies in the north.
I knew there was one.
Loyal servant to the true emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius. Anyway.
That's so good.
Husband to a murdered wife. Come on, dude.
That's so good.
Yeah. I'm in the same age now. This is one of my nerdy things. I like to look up how old actors are in movies.
Yeah.
I'm the same age. He was 39, I believe, and I'm 38, so I'm right around that. But if you think about it, they're probably filming a year before it came out anyway. But same age now as as Maximus.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I've been doing lots of push-ups to catch up.
What I love, thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I really love about that is he hits obviously the whole idea is try. Like, put yourself out there and try. And I love that, like you're mentioning about jealousy, and the person who just points out the fault of the other person but doesn't actually ever get involved, is like, ironically enough, like pride and insecurity and wishing ill intent because someone's doing something more that you want to do. That, ironically enough, just breeds more inaction.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that is a lot of people today, is that they're jealous, they're angry, they see things on social media that they wish they could have. And ironically enough, it doesn't breed action, it breeds inaction. Like, I would say 98% of the time, you hit the nail on the head for what the term is. It's not hedonistic necessarily. Nihilism, yeah. The nihilism breeds inaction. And I think that's like, it's something you have to be so careful for, to watch those red flags, because you're pretty toast if you let that infect your worldview.
I almost think that, like, it may be a symptom of postmodernism that's like crept into our stories, you know? And there's not, everything about postmodernism isn't horrible. I don't think that everything about postmodernism is horrible. But I do think one of the things that it does is it's forcing us to deconstruct things that don't need to be deconstructed. Like when it's infiltrated everything. Like, you look at what's happening to our heroes. I think about the new Star Wars trilogy, and I'm sorry if anyone likes it, that I'm going to talk some crap about it. But like, you have a hero that has a completed arc in Luke Skywalker and in Han Solo. Where, like, let me just take Han Solo as an example. Where in Episode 4, A New Hope, he's a scoundrel that only cares about himself, right? And he only does things for money. It's always out of self-interest. And by the end of Return of the Jedi, he is a powerful general and commander that cares about people and cares about something that's bigger than himself, right? He cares about the cause that is fighting for the side of the right, you know, the good. And he fails over and over again. He gets people killed, you know, like, this is something that, you know, this is really, really hard for him to deal with, but he still keeps pushing on for the cause. And then you have this new trilogy that comes out where it's like 30 years later and he's back to the same selfish scoundrel. And I understand that, like, it may be realistic because life can make people bitter and resentful, right? But it's not good for the story of a hero. Like, he did not need to be deconstructed, right? But I think it's almost a symptom of our culture where, like, people see something to emulate, and rather than emulate it, they scoff at it. Like, they see, like we almost have a hatred for success now. I'm not saying we, but like, there's like this weird thing in our culture where, like, the heroes to emulate are now seen as, I don't know, the oppressor, the bad guy, whatever it is. Like, it's like, this is a very strange thing. And I think even that idea of, like, questioning the substructure of our civilization, of our mind even, is now infiltrated our stories. And whether it was culture that pushed that into art or art that pushed that into culture, that's really hard to, like, you know, it's hard to kind of parse that out.
Yeah.
But I do think that kind of my point today with my 5-minute share was to talk about heroes, and emulation, and valor and courage, and strength in the face of suffering, you know, and how we need good heroes again. We need strong heroes to emulate as a culture. or else we're doomed, honestly. And so that's what's been on my heart recently, and been on my mind as I've been thinking about kind of where our culture is compared to the 90s. I mean, we were just talking about shows like Rick and Morty, where it's like it is hopeless in that universe and nothing means anything and nothing matters. And it's funny. Like, people laugh at the fact that there's like no hope. And then I think about movies like in the 90s, right? Or Gladiator, which I think came out in 2001, where it's clear that there was still this thread of things matter. What you do matters. It's good to be courageous. It's good to be valorous. It's good to care about justice and the things that nowadays are like thrown around as like either tropey, cliches, outdated, things like chivalry, like treating people with respect is now not about how well you treat others. It's about all about how you treat yourself. And I think treating yourself well is important. But I think a lot of times in treating others well, you are treating yourself well. Like you're treating your soul well.
Oh, yeah. It's like the idea that giving is still selfish.
Right.
Because you still get a lot of benefits out of it. So I think that's a perfect segue, actually, to kind of what I want to talk about today. Accepting the challenge, right? Overcoming. We have accepted new challenges this week. Some expected, some unexpected, some wanted, some not wanted. Brent, you had a big challenge a few weeks ago, and that has changed your whole life. For those who don't know, Brent has had his first child, which is fantastic.
Well, I didn't have him. My wife did.
Yeah.
Technically, but I helped.
I think they still
You
say
played a role,
technically.
But I helped.
You had a child.
I had the easy part for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a little beautiful baby boy at our house now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to hear for me, and I guess just like an overview and just transparency. Over this past week, I lost my job, what seems unfairly. And it was, a company I felt good about, employees I enjoyed being around and, doing work together with, but it is what it is. I was really angry for the first day, feeling like it was unfair. It wasn't truly justified, feeling like I got set up. But after that first day, what set in was gratitude. I think 2 reasons. When I was, younger, I always knew that I was going to be wealthy, as cliche and as silly as it might sound. But when even before I made any money, I made a promise with God, as a lot of us when we were younger made promises like, okay, if I could have a puppy, can you give me, I'll promise that I'll clean my room every day.
Mine are always like, God, if you can get me out of this one.
Yeah. For what I did, because I felt like he was manifesting these tools and these interests for me, and that it was going to lead to wealth. And I promised that if I would be giving from the minute I made money, no matter how much, I would be giving beyond 10% or whatever, and be a gracious person. Wow. And we've done that me and Savannah have done that, and my wife at really every income level. We've always tried to be generous and prioritize that over everything. So when I lost my job, it came out of a season of us doing even more generosity than we've probably done in the past year. So when it happened, it's like I was in tune with the Spirit. I was praying, and I felt like, okay, this is good. There's something here. And the minute I started applying for jobs, making different career moves, so trying to go a little bit further outside of my comfort zone and pushing the boundaries of maybe what I thought I could do on my own, I was getting responses every day, once a day for a whole week. I have 9 or 10 serious offers that I'm talking to right now, companies that are offering me positions that are either lateral moves or even some director positions, which is mind-boggling. So I feel really blessed. I feel really gracious that I have a little overwhelmed by all this opportunity. Obviously, for all the listeners out there, this is what I want to do. this podcast right here. So please support us so that we can make this a reality, a full-time contribution. But when it comes to my own personal career, the obstacle oftentimes is the way. Like if you want to dig
Ryan
into
Holiday.
that more, Ryan Holiday's Obstacle is the Way is a fantastic example of that. And I really feel like I've done all I could as a human to set myself up right for the universe to manifest that back. And so when this happened, it was anger for the first day. And then after that, it was like, okay, there's something to learn here. And there's something really good that's going to come out of this. Let's find it, as soon as we can. I want to hear though, Brent, for you, having a kid, man, it just like changes your world and your whole perspective on things and energy and everything changes overnight. So I want to hear a little bit more of your journey.
Wow. Well, there's so many things I want to jump in on with that, but yeah,
Same.
let me honor your question. Yeah, well, I mean, having a baby, this is my first child, so I'm still in, and he was born, his name's Amos Wilder Campbell, and he
Great
was
name.
born, yeah, thanks.
Strong, dude. Strong.
Yeah, I'm proud of the name. It was a really cool story. Maybe we'll share sometime on the podcast here how the name came to us. It was a very God thing, how the name came. But anyway, yeah, so first child, and he was born December 11th, so just over a month now. So we're still very much, unbeknownst to me, well, it's beknownst to me now, but there's a fourth trimester. You know what I mean? So a lot of mammals will just hit the ground running, literally. But humans, I guess the theory is because the reason humans are on top of the food chain, according to all that, is because of our brains are so big. That's borrowing from evolutionary biology. So that's a separate conversation maybe. But basically the idea is our brains are so big that for our brains to be big enough to be smart as we are, we have to
Decrease the gestation period down.
Yeah,
by
we
like
have
a
to be
third.
real pliable, and we're super vulnerable that way when we're born.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, we've been in the fourth trimester stage, and this is my first time through it. Very typical. Well, the typical thing about the fourth trimester is you don't get a lot of sleep, so that's been challenging for both of us. I mean, Lacey's carrying, my wife, she's carrying so much of this weight. I mean, as the mother, so it's just, I'm just over here just amazed by her, just trying to serve her however I can, truly. But yeah, I mean, I'm going back to I believe the setup was tell you about the journey.
Yeah, and maybe more specific, like what is the biggest thing that's changed for you? Either in your perspective, worldview, beyond just having a kid and the responsibility, but for you and your energy and how you see things.
Yeah.
How has that changed for you, and what has changed?
Okay. What I would say to that, in this blur of this last month, this is the first time perhaps I'm articulating any of this, so it's just going to come out.
Yeah.
So I guess that's part of the spirit of this podcast. I would say that the main thing that has changed, because I've been waiting for those moments. You know, I live for those moments. Anyone that knows me, I live for those moments. Like, I've had this vision of, Pride Rock, Lion King, Rafiki holding up Simba. Like I want that moment. And I've talked to so many dads. Well, actually, no. Picking up from like movies and TV. There's that moment with the dad, like when I had that kid in my arms for the first time, seeing that baby look back at me, it was like everything in my life changed. And I didn't have like a big a big moment like that.
Yeah.
But I think I have something far greater. It wasn't as cheap as a little moment. Not that that's cheap, but it wasn't this moment. It was this like sinking in over the last month of like, oh, everything is like deeper and wider now and like more serious, but also free. And so I've had plenty of moments like that. I have had that moment of looking into his eyes and like, oh my God, I'm a dad. I'm a father. Dare I even say it? I'm a father now. I called him son. Just came out the other day. I was like, hey, son. I was like, oh, geez, who is that? But so all this to say, to answer your question without going too far around it, the thing that I'm realizing that I've noticed that's been the biggest shift is I've become more of a serious man. And what I mean by that is, like, I know the lines I'm drawing in this. I'm feeling more compelled to draw lines in the sand and to know which hill is the one I'm dying on. Because before, even just being married, there was, and without a child, and then before marriage, he was even more so. I just had the luxury of not really having to be challenged on what I believe or you know what I mean? I was free to kind of move around and not really confront a whole lot of things, just kind of think about it from the exterior. And now with Amos here, there's none of that. It's like very, very serious. Like, no, this is very serious.
Right, because you have to pass that down. Any ideas and thoughts like have to be passed down intentionally. So like you can't just wander in ideologies, right? It's like because you either pass it down or you don't. You either agree with it or you don't. So like requires that level of intentionality.
Yeah. So to kind of close that out, I would say I'm not much of a political person, but I know what I think and believe about my values, and I've had to, like, now it's becoming more tactile. And I would say overall too, having a little baby, it's brought me even deeper to just the earthiness of and the grounded nature, the simplicity of life. Mm-hmm. Like, I can get real up here and ethereal in my imagination and thinking, but it's poopy diapers, and it's like eating and feeding and sleeping, and it's very earthy. It's very of the earth. And so that's been another epiphany. I haven't really articulated it yet, but because I like to be way up here, like above the storm, like being able to see this amazing perspective. But I've realized, this has helped me realize even deeper, that if my feet aren't on the ground, like if I want to fly, I have to first learn how to crawl and walk and move around the ground. And hopefully in that journey, learn how to stretch out tall enough where I can actually get above the clouds, too. And so that's been really cool. That's been really cool to experience embodying that. So if I want to fly, which I do, I must first, I think it's like shattered the fallacy of thinking in my mind, that my imaginative mind can go to, where I'm like, we can transcend what we're going through right now. We can transcend with our imagination. We can get out of here. And I'm realizing that, no, we can, yes, but fly, if you want to get up that high, if you want to transcend, you have to learn how to be strong enough with the basics, and then get your feet under you and grow that way. It's more organic, I think, and less fantastic, like less based in fantasy. So I would say that'd be the biggest thing, that now that I'm just articulating it now, it's made me more of a serious person in a good way. And I think we've quoted C.S. Lewis, there's a certain type of happiness or wonder that makes a man serious. Mm-hmm. And so that's just taken on deep meaning.
Is serious another word for intentionality?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and it's like reawakens my, this is going to be like a shallow thought maybe, but it's like, man, I really need to like learn how to fight. You know what I mean? Like, get good at fighting, because I'm the one on the wall now for my house. Mm-hmm. So when that, heaven forbid, that door gets busted in at 3 a.m, like I need to be ready to bring some pain and some power to and confront whatever that is. And so that's been a whole nother thing too. It's like, man, I need to like learn how to smash some people if I need to. Not that I ever would, but Nicolas Cage in the first scene of Con Air,
If necessity demands.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. I have a couple things I want to say to both you guys about this. First off, I recognize that a lot of people did not have great fathers. There's a epidemic of like fatherlessness in our culture that I think is wreaking havoc upon the next generation of men. There's this like insecurity in our own abilities and our ability to get things done and to be the people we're meant to be. Thankfully, I had a father who is my hero. You know, I look at my dad still. He's in his 60s, and he still is a strong, incredible leader that, like, he's loyal, and he's like good. He's good. He's just good, you know? And so, like, in this talk about heroes that we were talking about before, like my dad is my hero, you know? And so, but I recognize that that's not the case for a lot of people. What would you say as fathers? And, you know, I hope to be a father one day. What does it mean to you to be the hero to your kids?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I'd say hero. You have to break down kind of like what does a hero mean, and to me, a hero means like you empower people, right? Like you remove obstacles and things out of victims' way so that they can be themselves and have freedoms, right? Like a hero is a curator of freedom, an upholder of freedom. And so for me, my kids, how do I support their freedom? Well, for me, again, we're talking about wealth. I'm not a person who's like completely fixed on money, but I realize that money is leverage, right? So I want to give them the opportunities as much as I can, right? Whether that be they want to start their own business, or they want to go to a good school, or even a trade school, or do whatever. Like, I want to be able to have the means in which not only my kids, but their kids and, you know, family around me can have more freedoms to pursue their interests and what they're meant to do. So that's being a hero, is giving them opportunity and freedom as much as I can, and protecting their freedoms. I also think that just being a hero is like, for me, is just engaging, you know, being engaged and thoughtful, and whether that be even just like being silly or taking them for a walk or just spending quality time. Like that's a hero, you know, because there's such, like you said, there's such an epidemic of either dads not being in people's lives, or maybe they are in kids' lives, but they're just not present. So I think presence is heroic as a father.
Is there, like, when you see like Lathan do something that you do, does that like invoke something in you? Like, because when I think of heroes, like all of what you said is true, but I'm also thinking about it from like the individual that has the hero, right? Like, like the individual that has the hero looks at that hero and says, I want to be like them, you know? Like I mean, we talked about the Lion King already, but the way Simba's working on his roar, because his dad has a powerful roar, right? And wanting to emulate the best parts of Mufasa, but also be Simba, right? Like I would say, like, as like one who wants to be a dad, you know, I would hope, like, with my own dad, my own father, there are many things about him I want to emulate, and I want to be like him in that way. And in so doing, as you said, freedom, as I am like him in the ways that are good, it also gives me the courage and freedom to be like myself as well with those qualities, right? Like emulation.
Yeah. That's interesting thought. I appreciate that, because I look at it the way I look at it, and it's not, you know, better or worse, but the perspective I have is, and maybe just because I recognize that I'm a flawed human being, it's like I don't want you to emulate me. I want to be able to guide you through this life and like help remove obstacles, but I don't want you to be me. I want you to be yourself, you know, and I'm trying to manifest their individuality as much as possible. So the emulation of them doing things that I do, or to see myself in them, is really not present oftentimes, which is a really, I didn't even think about that until you said something. I just think that I'm a flawed human being, and I get some things right, but I also get a lot of things wrong. And obviously with parenting, as you know, you're just trying to figure it all out as you go along the process. And there's things I definitely get wrong. So I'm just trying to, raise people who love people and have love for themselves.
But isn't that emulation?
Maybe.
Like, I'm just wondering if it's something we can even get away from, right? Like let's say that hopefully the natural spirit of people is to want something, is generosity, is loving other people, and I think that there's a lot of obstacles in humanity's way that keeps that from being the things that people manifest in their own lives. But I would still say that you would hope that your sons would emulate the parts about you that are good.
Yeah.
And that hopefully that they take what you are and then add upon that themselves. The stuff that like hopefully they're better than you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can't do that without someone to mime. Like,
right.
We're mimetic creatures. There's a reason why, like, if you've ever seen the still face experiment that the babies did with their mothers, where the mothers just looked at the babies just with a dead face.
After playing with them
After
and
playing with them.
Yeah.
And then the babies freak out because there's something in human beings that's looking for love in the person across from them. Mm-hmm. And they see it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's no way to really get away from emulation. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Unless they're emulating bad things. Like, there's this concept like hurt people. And you have to take intention and like maneuver around the trauma, right? Like go into it and work through it, but to not pass it down again. Mm. Like, that takes intention, and that takes like having someone else to emulate, because they didn't have their own hero to emulate. And they, like, if let's say a dad wasn't present, a dad was horrible. You have two choices here, right? As the son of a dad who wasn't present, you can either be that dad and emulate him, or you can emulate another hero, someone who was present. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we can get away from that. That's why I think the value of heroes in art and culture is so important, and why I think the deconstruction of them is detrimental. Mm. Maybe I'm going like all these ways with this conversation, but
there's a thread there.
Right. But my point being, like, and this was the other thing I was going to say about your journey right now, is I saw when you called me and said you lost your job, right? Or, when I heard you lost your job, like, so many people would have like sat down and just done nothing and just fumed with anger. But you voluntarily faced that I think injustice, right? And you began to move forward. That is something I hope my nephews have. That's a quality I hope they emulate, because that is something that's the man in the arena. That's one who strives greatly, and even when they fail, they keep going, they keep pushing. And so I think that's my point, is that, like, obviously don't be a copycat, but sometimes to be the best version of yourself is to be the better version of your heroes.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, there's like this chain of command, because mimicry is everything. That's how we learn everything. We learn everything by mimicking what's around us. Mm-hmm. That's how we learn to talk and everything. That's why the English language is one of the most complex languages, according to my understanding, on the planet. We were using it by 2 years old. You know what I mean? Like, as a baby, because we were just mimicking what our parents were doing. And so I think this is a lot in like nature and nurture. This is going to be the nurture part side of the equation, is we learn everything from our parents. We emulate, we mirror everything they're doing. And that's what becomes our world map. And I think it's an important point too, because there's that chain of command. I think, this is just my opinion based on my worldview, but we're like, I think it's important that Jesus says, "Follow me." And so it's our job to follow Christ. And then we pass that down to our spouse, or across to our spouse, let's say. Because I don't mean to say that men are above like the husband's above the spouse. And so we this is what the invitation of marriage, which is why traditionally the man gets down on the knee and proposes, will you marry me? So Jesus says, follow me. And so it's our job to keep our eyes focused, like Peter out of the boat, and follow Christ. And then we extend the hand. Once we kind of orient ourselves in that direction, we extend our hands to our spouse and we say, hey, follow me. Come with me. Will you marry me? And then that passes down to our children as well. And I think it's an important point, too, in regards to hero and what it means to be a good father and things like that. And that, yes, the healthiest thing for a person is for their father or mother, hopefully both, to be their hero. And now that I'm thinking about it, listen to you talk, Jake, who has 2 children. So you've got some skin in the game and some experience here. This is my first time at it. But for me, I think that I want to teach Amos, I want to teach my son exactly what you're talking about, Spencer, both of y'all, is it's not about avoiding adversity. And even about what we think of adversity, it's about how to overcome adversity or awaken ourselves within it. So being able to, Teddy Roosevelt, I know a little bit about his story in that in his childhood he had a medical condition where he wasn't meant to make it through childhood. I think it was some kind of severe asthma or something like that. He had trouble breathing, and so literally a significant amount of his childhood was him gasping for air. And he was like this kind of I don't mean to be use disrespectful words, but he was kind of a sickly child. And he grew up in this really wealthy prestigious wealthy family, and so he was fine. I mean, he was going to be taken care of, but he wanted adventure. So he went out to the Dakotas and the Black Hills, and he became like a real cowboy and stuff, like the Rough Riders. That's the original Rough Riders. And so I think it's interesting that perhaps, and I would love to be a fly on the wall with some of those conversations between him and his father. But he refused to accept the fate that was given to him, that he was just going to have to kind of just take it easy. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. He went the other way around. Mm-hmm. So for me, that makes me think of the image that's coming to mind is being on vacation. Every year we would go on vacation as a family. We'd like go on these road trips and go through the West, and we'd listen to cowboy stories when we're going through like Oklahoma, and it was like super magical. But with long drives, because we go out West. And so I remember like everybody in the van would be passed out. And every once in a while, as a kid, you kind of wake up and see what's going on. And maybe it's like 10 o'clock at night or something. We're still driving, and everyone in the van is asleep. Except Dad. He's just pounding coffee up there. He's like in it. He's in the fight, and that's fatherhood to me, is being able to be strong in the face of adversity. Not that, sleep deprivation's maybe not the most extreme example, but that's Dad. That's the father, is he's going to be up when everyone else is asleep. And
the Over 100 podcast.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But yeah, so for me, and
podcast for dads.
So, yeah. And I think it's like that face like flint, that, Jesus was kind of had this dual relationship with his disciples, where he was like their pal and their friend and their brother in some ways. And there was also, I can't remember what gospel it's in, but it talked about every once in a while the disciples would see him and be scared, like terrified, because he had this face like flint, I think is maybe I'm mixing up my scriptures, but basically he had this seriousness about him that, they were like intimidated by. Like he was able to drop into this deep, he was able to pal around with them, but he would drop into this deeper thing when he needed to, and it was like, oh, what's this? And for me, that's what a hero is able to do, and that's what a father's able to do, is, hey, let's have fun. I'm going to teach you all kinds of things. We're going to be pals to some degree, but there's also going to be this very deep thing in me, this backbone, this depth, this complexity, and this seriousness that I hope I am able to embody by following Jesus and doing that well. And I hope Amos is able to see that and also emulate that.
Yeah. So, go ahead, man.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I think of, since we're on the topic of Jesus as the as the ultimate to be emulated character, the ultimate hero. I mean, existing in reality, in history, and also as an archetype in a sense. Like the idea of follow me, the idea of the rabbi was that the disciples of the rabbi would do everything that they did. And so the follow me was less like, hey, check out what I'm doing. And it was more so like, hey, do what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Give up everything and
like
me.
This is the way to live your life. And so I'm going to show you the way to live your life in a way that not only makes you, because even still, like, Peter was a fiery individual that had a lot of passion and zeal. And I guarantee you that Jesus loved that about him. But at the same time, it had to be tempered, right? And so for Peter to follow Christ looked different than for James to follow Christ. I mean, it didn't, but it also did, right? Yeah. Like, there's still these things that unite in the grand narrative, that these are the important things, but how we do those important things differ by, I think, temperament and by nature and by nurture and all these sorts of things. So in becoming like the person we want to emulate, we are also becoming a truer form of ourselves, right? Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. But like courage and valor, right? Valor usually is talked about in like the terms of battle, you know? But I don't think it's just that. I think there are many different types of battles, but having this like bravery and courage in the face of like pain and adversity, and then courage, I think, is voluntarily facing the thing that you fear. It's not having no fear. And so I can only imagine someone who's not a father myself, that there's also a level of fear that comes with being a dad, you know, for your children, and hope for them. But courage is facing that and still doing what you know to be right for them in light of that fear, right? But also with hope.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think this is a longer conversation, as it always is, which is why I'm glad we're doing this. This is kind of long form thing that even if it's not today, this we're going to keep getting deeper into every single one of these conversations. But yeah, in regards to, this makes me think of John Eldredge, Wild at Heart, which is on our reading list that I recommend every man checks out. And I read that book when I was in college, and that book served as a homing beacon for me. That 10 years later, it was one of the things. I read it in college. I remember being kind of inspired by it, but I wasn't in a place in my life where I didn't have the seriousness. You know, I still wanted to kind of explore a lot of different things. But I remember being inspired by it. But I've since come back to what he's saying in that book, and one of the things that he talks about, to generalize one of the themes of the book, is he talks about this idea of the father wound, and that every boy, you know, it is right, Spencer, that a boy is meant to look at his father as his hero. And what kind of nihilism can sink in and saturate that boy if father's not present? I want to talk about presence a little bit too. Like it's better to be present, like fully present for 10 minutes than just to be around for the whole day.
Oh yeah.
And so that's the other thing too, about how, in my view, a hero needs a mission. And as a father, the family can't be the whole mission. Like the father needs to be there, and the family is definitely part of the mission. And it's the father's job and part of the mission to protect and provide. But the father also, in my view, needs another mission, needs a horizon to be looking at, that he is extending to his family. Come with me. This is where we're going. And that can be obviously collaborated with in marriage with your partner. But the father wound, so basically Eldredge talks about this concept where every boy looks to his father and almost like comes to his father with his identity and says, you know, Dad, like, do I have what it takes? Like, am I dangerous? Can I be dangerous like you? And it's the father's job to be able to, not with words, but with action and with presence, be able to answer that question. Like, yes, you're a dangerous man. And let me tell you, you can be a dangerous man too. And let me tell you what that means. It doesn't mean being a fool and going into folly and dangerous in all the wrong reasons, like reckless. but it means dangerous and good, like that C.S. Lewis, like Aslan, when Lucy saw Aslan, is he safe? No, he's not safe, but he's dangerous, but he's good, And that, to me, that's the hero, dangerous and good. So, when the wolf comes to the door, that wolf will be met. If the wolf intends harm on the family, that wolf will be met with absolute violence immediately. You know what I mean? If necessary. But the goodness is the governor with that. And so Elder talks about this point that when boys don't get that question answered by their fathers, and just in the reality of our brokenness, even with the best of fathers among us, it's very rare that question gets answered fully. And so if that question doesn't get answered fully, then that boy grows into adolescence where he's testing out his own strength. This is a very important time for a father to be there and to be strong and to be present. Then that boy will take it to his friends, that question, do I have what it takes? Am I dangerous? He'll take it to a woman. Do I have what it takes? Can you complete me? Can I be dangerous? Mm-hmm. And no one can answer those questions. Only the Father can, and ultimately our spiritual father has to be the authority on that. And so part of the masculine journey, the hero's journey, is to be able to find the answer to that question, be able to find my ability to be lethal and dangerous and good at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Love that. It reminds me of I heard Jordan Peterson say this, so I haven't vetted it myself, but he kind of has you rethink the scripture about blessed are the meek. We talked about this before, where we hear blessed are the meek in scripture and we think, oh, blessed is the person who's just kind of like cast over and, not really making eye contact with people. Like maybe he's saying blessed are, the weak, blessed are, the little ones. Cause he, talks about like being a child and he has such a focus on children. But really, that's not really what it's implying. What the Greek seems to suggest, actually, is that blessed are the meek, and that means more of blessed is one who has his sword but keeps it sheathed, right? It's not that you don't have teeth, it's that you refrain and you have restraint.
Which is the best hero, is the reluctant, like, I don't want to fight you. Like, he'll do everything diplomacy first, everything first, but then when it comes to it, it's like, this is going to end now. Like it's the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, which is the appeal to jiu-jitsu for me, is like, I want to cultivate that. Cause for me, every fight I've ever been in, for the most part, just being in a few knucklehead fights, have just been, I'm just like all in. I'm just going to go straight banshee, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing, Yeah. It just takes a matter of, anyway, this is sidebar.
But wait, no, that's funny. That's funny that you say that though, because the first rule of jiu-jitsu, and like for all like serious fighters, is to de-escalate the situation first. Like the first, how to answer the question, well, how do I win a street fight, is to not engage with it or to get yourself away safely. But then if you get push comes to shove, you're getting attacked or someone else is getting attacked and someone else is a victim, then you hop in. And like that's meek.
The picture of Mel Gibson, The Patriot. The scene, I think in movies, I don't know, sorry guys, but the scene in The Patriot, this could be a whole another 5-minute share maybe, where if you remember towards the beginning of the scene where they're setting the story and you're trying to figure out who, Mel Gibson was this father, a farmer, and also he built, he was like a carpenter, tinkering around building rocking chairs, if you remember that. He was like, couldn't get it right and kept breaking. Kind of this docile, like getting responsible, getting things done, but kind of a passive character. But he had this kind of haunting story about him that his kids kind of heard whispers about and saw how other men, like badass dudes, would come to the house and just treat him with such respect and reverence. And they're like, who is this guy? Who is this dad? And that's part of the fear, I'm talking about. It's like, man, who is dad? What is his dad's story? And he's got this trunk in his house that's locked away. Anyway, the inciting incident for him was when he was a reluctant hero, because at that time, the inciting incident for him was when the enemy came and basically burned his house down and took his family and ended up taking one of his sons hostage. And in that scuffle, one of his younger boys was murdered by the enemy for just trying to save his older brother, in this moment of passion. And then Mel Gibson's character at that moment This is my favorite, dude. Every time I'm like, oh, I want to beat my chest, bro. I think it's our responsibility as men to be this strong and be able to go to this level of intensity. The house is burning down. Mel Gibson, like in the moment, he's like about to come out of his skin. Like you could see the lion starting to show its teeth now. But he's still got his kids there, and he's still trying to like manage, because they could all be dead if he makes the wrong decision. And he waits till the enemy gets out of eyesight. He runs in the burning house, and his kids are like, "What is happening?" You guys remember this scene?
Mm-hmm.
And he comes out just a few minutes later carrying guns and powder horns, and his I think two younger boys at this point, and they must have been like 6, 7, 8. He throws them the guns. He goes, "Samuel," whatever the other one's name is, "you're with me," and they're just like wide-eyed, just like, "Oh, okay." He makes sure that that his daughter and the women are safe, and then he goes off and just tears off after the enemy, and they create this amazing ambush in that moment where the lion is out, and where he's demolishing with an axe one of the enemies, and his boys are just like shocked, like, there he is. They were terrified and also probably never felt safer than in that moment. But yeah, we all need the ability to go to that place, I think.
And the cool thing about that scene is it wasn't just vengeance, because I think there's also a wisdom in staying the hand, staying the weapon if there's no use in it. But he was rescuing his son.
Yeah, and that's the meekness. Yes, that's the meekness, because I heard somewhere, I don't know where I picked this up, but that one of the definitions of meekness, it was a term that used to describe like Spanish war horses or something like that. Like they were meek. Now, if you've ever been around a big horse, they're terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're like terrifying creatures to be around, especially like standing next to them, just to see their strength. And so they've trained these horses to go into battle over the years. Anyway, the horse at any time is strong enough and powerful enough that it could buck its rider off and just smash his face if he wanted to. Like the horse could kill the rider at any time. But when the horse is trained, when it's broken, it's basically conditioned to trust the goodness of the rider, so much so that it'll run right into cannon fodder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's meekness. It's not weakness. It's not I don't like Jordan Peterson said, there's nothing virtuous about a bunny rabbit. A bunny rabbit is totally harmless. But there is something virtuous about a lion that can lay down with the lamb. That like a war horse that could kill its rider at any point, but is committed and surrendered to the command of the good nature of that person. And that's fatherhood to me.
I love this archetype that Mel Gibson represents. My favorite book series of all time is a book called The Wheel of Time. And this is, I guess, a spoiler for like the first 30 pages of this book. But the main character of the story is Rand al'Thor, and his dad, Tam, was a shepherd. And just a good man. A good father, was well respected in the community. And there's this attack on their farmhouse where Rand learns that Tam is a lot different than he thought. Because he didn't know anything about his father's backstory, really. Just what he told him. But these things called Trollocs, they're essentially the Oryx of the Wheel of Time, attack the farmhouse. And Tam pulls out a trunk, and this book was written in 1990, and pulls out this sword with a heron mark on it, which was the sign of the Blade Master in this culture. And then Tam just shreds through these Trollocs. And there's this picture of just like Rand sitting back and watching his father be who he is. And like his whole world changes in that moment. Because he's seen what it means to be a shepherd that can also be the bringer of mayhem when it's necessary to protect what that person loves. And I think that that's an archetype that shows up. And then Rand becomes that reluctant hero that you see in like people like Luke Skywalker, where at the end of Return of the Jedi, in a fit of rage, he almost kills his own father, right? And then he's able to put the weapon down and say, no.
That was the temptation, right? Because it wasn't I'm not a big Star Wars guy, but it wasn't one of those like the Dark Lord or whatever.
Yeah.
Like over there, like kill him, take it, take what's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the temptation to make that wrong decision, the impassioned decision, as opposed to realizing in real time, if I kill him, I kill me.
Yes. I like that. There's this quote that a friend of mine said one time, that I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's essentially every time like a man kills someone, 2 people die, you know? And I think that that's really profound, you know?
I heard that recently. Like very recently I heard that. I don't remember where I got it.
Yeah, I don't know if that was from a book or from a movie, but he said it one time in a conversation and just like, whoa. It's like, wow, that's powerful, because it does change something in you. Like, even if it's for a good reason, I'm sure it changes something in you. But I think Luke realized it in that moment, that to surrender to the passion, to the fury, to the rage, when the opponent was already beaten, would be taking that too far.
Yeah.
And he's able to.
And at that time, just to go into that universe, the little that I know about it, he had to do a lot of training to get there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of he had to suffer through a lot of humiliation and defeat just to get there.
Yeah.
Through his training with Yoda, I think Yoda
Yeah.
in like the woods, where he like lifted the spaceship and stuff like that with his mind or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's been a long time. But basically, part of that training was if anger doesn't have strength and conviction, then it's the worst kind of danger, like a wildfire. It's going to burn everybody up. And so that kind of restraint is also, I think, really important to that story. And so kind of full circle, going back to the man in the arena. It's not the critic who counts, but it's the one with skin in the game. That the critic is all anger with zero strength. You know what I mean? And it's so pathetic. And we can all be this. So I'm not like, I'm judging, but I'm also considering myself in that to some degree, and hopefully as little as possible if I'm doing my job. But it's kind of like, I have this like image of, this is going to be a gross generalization, but like public high school. Like the heroes are like the quarterback of the football team. Like the strong athletic ones are usually like the heroes in the high school universe. They're the ones that have the strength, that have skin in the game. And then you have like, it's going to grossly overly simple, I'm sorry, but you also kind of have like the kind of broody kind of smoker kids, you know what I mean? That don't have any skin in the game, but they're usually like funny. You know, they usually have those snarky little comments and stuff, and they can like take pot shots, but of no consequence to them because they're not in the game. That's what I think. That's the illustration of the hero, or the man in the arena is, hey, I could die out here, but every millisecond I'm here, I'm fully alive, more alive than you've ever been.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. I'm sorry. Before we get too far, you said that in the Patriot, he goes and gets a chest. And then in that book, he goes gets the chest. Does the chest represent meekness? Because it's the thing that holds the weapon. Is the chest the archetype of meek?
I almost think that the chest is... I almost think the chest is representative of like the compartmentalization of the person who has experienced the trauma. Like for Mel Gibson, he's tortured by his actions that made him who he is. And so he puts it in a box and he holds it secret and sacred. And then it's only when it's necessary, I'm getting emotional. It's only when it's necessary for the monster to come out that he goes and opens the chest.
So it's the shadow.
Maybe it's the shadow. Maybe I don't know.
See, I think it's about identity, because that shadow is a part of identity. But for me, in that story, Mel Gibson wasn't his character. What was his name in that movie? Nathan?
I think it's Nathan. That sounds right. No, I think that was his son that died.
Anyway, his character in the movie wasn't fully integrated until the monster came out, because he had this first life where he was the monster. And he had so much shame and regret about it. And he was trying to shield his children from, like, he had done some brutal things, apparently. and he was trying to like just have a nice white picket life after that and just kind of leave that guy at bay. And I believe his wife was able to anchor him in that, and then she passed away, I think, before the movie started, or before that story started. So I think for me, what was in the trunk was his real identity, was the other piece of his identity, and that he was too scared to bring out. And we can all relate to this, I think. But that part of ourselves, are we strong enough and convicted enough and centered and anchored enough to be able to let our shadow out and be integrated, where that meekness can be there, where the shadow can come out, but it doesn't overpower me.
It is. You're still restrained. Yeah.
Yeah.
In goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what was in the trunk was part of his identity, and it was also part of his, I guess, power. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he needed. That's why he kept it locked away.
Right. The lightsaber's locked away too. In New Hope.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan opens that thing and hands it to Luke, and it was his father's weapon, So I mean, that there's something there.
It's always the father's sword, right? Braveheart, same thing.
Yeah.
Before, I can't do that. That was a terrible accent. But before you use this, I will teach you to use this.
Yes.
It was his father's sword.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
Huh. These stories are fascinating, and how they're almost universal to our experience, and universally applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at on time, Jake?
We're 106.
I'm always at the point where I'm like, we could like keep going.
Yeah, I would love to keep going, but I have a puppy at home that's giving me underlying anxiety.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you usually kind of swing through at the end here brilliantly, and like bring some kind of practicality to the table as far as this conversation. Can you do that?
There's two parts, right? It's the hero. Well, actually, it's not two parts. There's a thread there. I think Spencer hit it geniusly. There's the hero, right? The intentional person who is looking out for other people and victims, but the hero has teeth. He's a hero because he is dangerous, but he is good. And
you can't be the hero if you're not dangerous.
Right. And I think I'll defer to Carl Jung, because I think that's the problem with those who don't participate, who aren't a part of the ring. Have they fully integrated themselves? Have they integrated the shadow? No, they don't have any control over it, right? They just act out off of pride. I think the best thing practically you can do is to find like what comprises your shadow. What is the trauma that's led to it? What is your weapon? And then how can you verbalize it, right? To know the red flags of when that is starting to take over, right? So that it can be in the chest and it can be used appropriately when it needs to, instead of it controlling you, right? That's about as practical as I can really think of, because I think we're really up there, but I think in really good ways.
A good story is Ordinary Men.
Yeah.
About facing shadows. I think that's a really good, that should probably be on the reading list. How were ordinary men able to become the Nazi prison guards, but also I think that another word, instead of dangerous, not that dangerous is a bad word, it is, but that kind of solidifies and clarifies, is capability.
Yeah.
What are you capable of? Because then it becomes more than just violence. It also becomes strength. It becomes integrity. It becomes character. Mm-hmm. It becomes drive and determination and persistence. And so in that sense, like the person who has the capability of all these things and the wisdom to know how and when to use it, how and when to use the weapon. That's what I think it all boils down to for me. Being a hero, being the man in the arena, not the armchair quarterback, the dude who played, something in middle school and now mocks Tom Brady when he throws an incomplete pass. You know, that's the sort of thing that's always so frustrating. Where it's like, if I was in the ring in UFC, I would have knocked that guy out. You know, it's like, no, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
You would have been absolutely destroyed because you haven't put in the work to become the man in the arena. So to aim yourself at something you find valuable and then do the work to where you can be the person that steps out and does what is necessary and what is good, instead of being the person that says what you would do but is incapable of doing it.
Right, because you can't be a hero without virtue.
Right.
And you can't have virtues if you haven't defined what is inherently valuable to you. Because virtue and having goals, you're applying that there's inherent value. And I think that goes back to what we say from the very beginning of the 0400 podcast. Like, who are you? What do you want? Where are you going? Those are value statements. And you can't be a hero if you can't define what is value to you, what is valuable, and what is your character, right?
Yeah, that would just be a potential hero, which I think every hero is in the arc, you know, in the story. Is they're kind of ushered into it,
right? Yeah,
they're a potential hero, and then they get tested at some point, you know. Yeah, and I think this could be certainly a longer conversation about many of the aspects of our culture today. There's a lot of people that are not in the arena taking pot shots, and it's not good. It's not good at all. We've, in some ways, when I say we, I mean, in some ways, these voices have been given a lot of power, and it's not. That's like the roar of the mob, you know. And when I say mob, I'm talking about Rome. You know, the mob is what overtook Rome, and so they would just give them spectacle and throw them bread, you know, bread and what is it? Bread and circus or whatever, or what is the phrase? Spectacle. Know. Anyway, that's how you is docify a word? That's how you make a crowd docile. Yeah. Is you entertain them and you give them food. And
Netflix and microwave burritos.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I would say practically though, if to everyone listening and to everyone at this table, right now, there is something that you know you need to be doing. There is right now something in your conscience that you know, God, that's the thing. It's either the uncomfortable conversation you need to have, or it's the decision that needs to be made, or it's the habit that needs to be broken. Whatever it is, I guarantee you, everyone listening right now, it's already in your mind. You already know what it is. And I would say, practically speaking, on this journey, do that thing immediately. Immediately do that thing. And if you need support in that, great, grab the support. Going back to the hero is capable. So when the hero also needs support as well. And it's the hero's job to go out and find it.
Love that.
Who are you? What do you want? Where are you going? This has been the 0400 podcast. See y'all next time. Keep dreaming.
Keep dreaming.